G'day, I'm Nick Duigan and I'm here to get you started on your adventure here in the magnificent Arthur-Pieman Conservation Area. The popularity of this place as a four-wheel driving experience has quadrupled in the last decade. The secret's out about just how spectacular and challenging the Arthur-Pieman is for four-wheel drive adventure. Unfortunately, it's also probably had more accidents and vehicle losses than any other four-wheel driving experience in Australia, and that's mainly because people don't know what they're letting themselves in for. We hope to change that by making sure that if you do decide to go, you'll be coming home safe and sound with lots of great stories to tell. So, listen up. The Arthur-Pieman Conservation Area protects more than 100,000 hectares of magnificent wild country. It gets its name from the two major rivers that form its southern and part of its northern boundary. Most people access the area from the northwest coast along the Bass Highway. You can also come up from the south from Corinna along the Western Explorer two-wheel drive road. All recreational vehicle tracks in the Arthur-Pieman follow the coast except for one challenging inland track, the Balfour track, which heads into the remote old mining town of Balfour. Next, you need to know whether this place is right for you and your capabilities as a four-wheel driver, and you need to know the capabilities of your vehicle. The recreational vehicle tracks are for competent, experienced four-wheel drive users with high clearance vehicles, not SUVs, and for trail bikes and quad bikes. There are serious hazards in the Arthur-Pieman. This is not the place to learn how to four-wheel drive. What are the hazards? Well, let's run through them. Beach driving. Tassie's wild and stormy west coast beaches are considered by many to be the most treacherous in Australia. Just because you cruise down a beach with no dramas one day won't mean you'll be able to do the same the next. Plenty of people have been caught out with sudden storms, high seas and rising rivers. The first thing you need to do approaching a beach or any sand driving is to deflate your tyres. This increases their surface area to cope with the soft sands. You'll be needing a tyre gauge for this and a tyre compressor to reinflate once your beach driving is over. The key to driving on these beaches is to keep your momentum up. You need to maintain a bit of speed, then it's eyes front to keep a lookout for hazards, and there are plenty of them. The main ones to watch out for are surging or freak waves, and these can sneak up from behind you too. Also sand drop-offs, driftwood logs, slippery bull kelp, jagged rocks, but by far the most treacherous are sea foam and quicksand. Sea foam builds up after a few days of heavy seas. It's dangerous because it hides all of the other hazards. Quicksand is often at river crossings. You won't always see it until you're in it, and when you're in it you'll know because you'll come to a rapid halt and start to sink immediately. There is an art to dealing with soft sand and especially with quicksand. Really, you're best off seeking some professional advice and getting some training before you go. Rivermouth crossings. When you arrive at a rivermouth crossing, get out of your vehicle and check the condition of the sand at the rivermouth by walking it first. Then spend time watching what the sea and the waves are doing. You need to cross over as far out towards the sea as you can without getting caught by the incoming waves. It's tricky and plenty of people, even very experienced drivers, get into trouble. Don't think that because you got over it one day you'll get through it the same way the next. Treat each river crossing as if it were the first time, one vehicle at a time with other vehicles at the ready with recovery equipment if you get in strife. Deep bogs and river and creek crossings. Tassie creeks and rivers are stained dark red-brown by tannins leached from the vegetation. You can't see how deep the water is, so if there's no water depth marker you need to get out and walk it. The bases are often firm, but check. Ideally your vehicle should be fitted with a snorkel, and it's also a good idea to cover the front of your bonnet with a tarp to protect your electrics. If your electrics go, you'll be in more trouble than the early settlers. Always travel in groups in the likely event that you get bogged. You'll need other vehicles to help you as there are few trees around to winch from. Where possible, drive through a bog, not around it. Track widening is ugly and erodes peat soils which take thousands of years to form. So there are plenty of hazards, which is why parks request that you never go south of Tema or on the Balfour track without at least 2 other vehicles to assist in case you get into trouble. And if you do get yourself into trouble, you need to know how to get yourself out again safely. This is a remote area, particularly down around Sandy Cape. If you find yourself in a life-threatening situation, it could take emergency services a day or longer to reach you, particularly if the beaches or the river crossings are impassable, and it will cost you dearly. So, some good advice. Travel with others, preferably those who know the place. Know what recovery gear you need and how to use it safely. Know basic first aid and take a comprehensive first aid kit, and have good two-way radio communications and an EPIRB. If you don't go. Now to kitting up your vehicle. At a minimum, you should carry and know how to use an approved snatch strap. At least 2 rated D shackles, a long-handled spade, compressor for tyre inflation, ground anchor, sand ladders, a couple of good planks, a high-lift jack and a hand winch. Even if you've got an electric winch, you still need a hand winch if your electrics fail. Of course, service your vehicle before visiting, check your communication equipment, carry adequate fuel, water, oils, tools and spares. Things like fan belts, tyres, radiator and heater hoses, fuel tank and radiator repair kits. And you'll be needing one other essential item to save yourself from a nasty head-on collision over a steep crest, and that's a tall flag fitted to the front of your vehicle. If you're doing a recovery, keep everyone well clear. Straps, cables and connection points can break and can become missiles that severely injure or kill, and tragically they have. Never ever use a tow ball, tow bar or vehicle tie-down point as a recovery point. Read your manual to know where your recovery points are. If you haven't got them, get them fitted. Remember, you are more valuable than your vehicle. If recovery of your vehicle is not safe, do not attempt it. Contact emergency services. You might be feeling a little bit unsure after all that, but don't worry, you still have options. You can contact one of the local four-wheel drive clubs and see if you can either get some professional training with an accredited trainer or join one of their regular informal trips and go with people who know the country. So that's the vehicle and driving nuts and bolts, but what about looking after this extraordinary place? Around 10,000 visitors each year experience these tracks, and it's steadily increasing. That's a pretty significant impact, so if we want to keep this place in good shape for the future, we're going to have to work together. Here are the key things for caring for the Arthur-Pieman. Stay on track. If you're not driving on a track that's signed on ground as open or isn't in the Recreational Driving Guide, then you're off track and illegal. Hefty fines apply. Occasionally some tracks will be closed seasonally to protect peatlands or wetlands. Going off track causes serious erosion, which costs heaps of your tax money to fix and basically makes the place look pretty awful. Parks have lots of locals and four-wheel drive club members who regularly give their time to help fix tracks and protect the heritage. You don't want to incur the wrath of the locals. Aboriginal Country. For hundreds of generations, this country formed part of the homelands of the northwest Tasmanian Aborigines. Tragically, their culture was torn apart when Europeans arrived in the early 1800s. So what we've still got that helps to tell their story is priceless. It can never be recreated. This button grass landscape was created by their repeated burning to keep it low and open and encourage certain plants, and also to attract wildlife and make it easier for hunting. And right along the coastline are the living areas where the people camped and ate. Over thousands of years of living and eating in the same spot, huge middens have built up, which contain shells, animal bones, stone tools and ash from their campfires. There are also amazing rock carvings called petroglyphs and circular depressions in the ground where their dome-shaped huts were built. In fact, this place is so important for its Aboriginal heritage that the 2-kilometre coastal strip from Marrawar in the north to Granville Harbour in the south was recently placed on the National Heritage List. This is worthy recognition for just how important this country is to all Australians. It also means that if you damage or destroy Aboriginal heritage in this area, you will be prosecuted and fined very heavily. So if you do visit, stick to the approved tracks and you'll be right. And while you're here, take the time to sit near a midden to think about the many Aboriginal families over thousands of years who sat in the same spot as you. It's quite a remarkable feeling. Shorebirds. If you're visiting between September and April, which is quite likely, you'll be sharing the beach with little nesting shorebirds, hooded and red-capped plovers and pied oyster catchers. They feed on the tiny bugs living in the sand and nest above high tide in the dry sand amongst the seaweed. Keep your vehicle and your dog away from them. Drive on the wet sand near the water's edge, if it's safe to do so, of course. Leave no trace. 50,000 people a year visit the Arthur-Pieman, including 10,000 on the track network. That's a lot of people and a lot of potential impact. There are 7 principles of leave no trace which have been adopted by park services worldwide. They make logical sense. Pause on this spot and have a read. You'll also find these listed on the inside front cover of your recreational driving guide. 2 things on this I want to highlight. If you do visit, arrive with a clean vehicle, a clean boat and clean walking, fishing and dive gear. We want to avoid introducing or spreading nasty plant and animal diseases and pests. Staying on track also helps reduce the risk of spreading anything you might be carrying on your vehicle. So after all that, if you still think the Arthur-Pieman is for you and you reckon you're sufficiently skilled for the challenge, you will need to purchase a recreational driving pass from Parks. Jump online and pick the pass that suits your needs. You'll probably be asked to show your pass while you're in the reserve, so have it handy. You'll also rely heavily on the Arthur-Pieman Recreational Driving Guide, which details the tracks you're permitted to drive on and everything else you'll need to know about the area, including everything I've said here. And of course, it goes without saying, driving on tracks is just like driving on roads. Road rules apply. So, belt up, all vehicles must be registered and obviously have a current driver's licence for the type of vehicle you're driving. Unregistered, unlicensed vehicles have no insurance cover. One last thing, this is a multiple use reserve. You will be sharing the area with walkers, cars, mountain bikes, trail bikes, quad bikes, horses and cattle. Now to recap, be prepared. Recreational driver pass, rego, licence, food and water, fuel, safety gear, recovery equipment, well-equipped vehicle, experienced drivers. Don't go in alone, find some experienced travel companions. Get local advice, including a long-range weather forecast. Tell someone when you're going and when you're expected to return, so they can raise the alarm if you don't show. So that's about it. Enjoy the Arthur-Pieman Conservation Area. It is remote, it is a challenge, and it is a truly magical place.